Service magazine.
I know you told me that, but I get so many of them. So
Trying to pawn them off.
you're getting two.
Say, Lisa,
One for home and one
on the
for
LD40 account, you show not quite 710,000. Do you have anywhere in your archives or whatever, what is committed out of that?
Yes, should be on the report, my report,
Like there's a business loan that's.
$601,708.
Is earmarked, okay, yep.
Earmarked, so that's promised but not paid yet.
Right, yeah, and that's what I was wondering, you know, it looks really good, but I know there's quite a bit been spoken for.
Yep, that
It's
hasn't
not,
been drawn down.
yeah, got drawn down. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, I got 5 o'clock, we'll call the meeting to order. Start with the Open Meetings Act is posted on the wall in the customary spot. If you want to peruse that. And move on to roll call.
Brad,
Yes.
Vance,
Yep.
Sean,
Yes.
and Skylar is absent.
All right, 3 present and accounted for. Join me please in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
State president.
Move on to item 2, the consent agenda. All items can be approved in one motion, or you can deal with them separately as you please.
I'll make a motion to approve this consent agenda. Thing.
Moved in second, any discussion? Call roll.
Vance, Sean,
Aye.
Brad,
Yes.
Oh, that's it? Motion carried unanimously. I'll move on to item 3, mayor's appointments and reports. No appointments this month. I could report on my vacations into warm and sunny Mexico and Arizona, but instead I'll mention, got to visit the 3rd grade class a few weeks ago, and was visited with KBR leadership group today. And so, got to answer questions, describe, things about civic government and all. But the most interesting thing is if you ask a 3rd grade class, are there any questions? About 80% of the hands go up. If you ask KBR leadership class, nobody says that. Not quite, that's not true. They were both good and enjoyed them both, so.
So did you determine if you were smarter than a 3rd grader, Joel?
No, but the burning question for 3rd graders is chickens in Ainsworth, which goes back, what, 10 years or so?
Long time, yeah, it's been a
I
while.
don't know if it's been 10 years, but it's close.
So, we had a good time there. Lisa went along on that, and I guess it was just as Vance was gonna be, and you had a family emergency. But, yeah, good time. So, we will move on, unless there's any questions, move on to the public hearing for the City of Ainsworth 1 6-year street improvement plan, resolution number 22-01.
Lloyd was not able to come tonight, he's out of town, but basically the proposed plan hasn't changed a whole lot from what you saw last year. We did complete some armor coating of some of the streets that was on the plan last year, and that's referenced in the back on one of the forms here. So the main improvements, the priorities we feel are still the same. With the Highway 20 project scheduled to begin this spring, it was sort of our consensus opinion that just maintenance might be the best plan for this summer in terms of the 1-year plan. I don't know if council members have any questions on the plan, or if anyone in general has questions.
I Yeah, I think that is probably the right way to go. You know, we have talked several times about putting a paving district together, and I think we still need to look into what it's gonna take to do a paving district and which our priority ones are. But I do think we should probably, before we actually embark on a paving district, we need to see what our streets are after Highway 20 and Main Street get done. Because like Lisa alluded to, that a lot of the local traffic is gonna be using other streets. Even some of our heavier equipment coming through town is gonna be using some of our other streets other than Main Street and Highway 20. So, you know, our 61-year plan could change a lot this time next year. They could really get tore up, so I think we need to, but we do need to definitely move forward on maybe even a study on our paving districts and stuff.
Well, and to that point, anything done before Highway 20, hopefully, if they get moving on that. But I think we should probably look, see what's gonna be feasible to get done prior to that Main Street project, so we can get ahead of it. If we can get something paved prior to, so we're not tearing up the streets for however long, and we can have a better solution before that happens, if that makes sense.
One of the major streets that's gonna be used, of course, is going to be that First Street to Pine Street is gonna be a major
Yeah.
street. And the First Street's really bad, Pine Street's gonna get that way. I don't think there's any way we can get a paving district set up and implemented and completed by the time we have our Main Street project started.
Well, if it sticks to the schedule of Highway 20s, we can probably be 10 years past due by the time we get our Main Street project. It just seems at the rate those go, where we have to wait on the state, if we can control that, do what we can to get it done, rather than, because if we sit and wait on the state again, it's been said how many times, when was 20 supposed to be done, in 2016, and here
We
we
can
are.
certainly, you know, look for some kind of a preliminary study
Yeah.
to target.
I think
the
any
areas on
goal
the
we can get
6 year.
And figure out some, hopefully there's some kind of grant funding out there
Get
and
some
stuff.
estimates, so we kind of know what we're gonna be tackling when we decide to bite that off. But we will be doing some armor coating this year, it is in the budget, so it's not to say that we won't be doing anything that's listed on this plan. We certainly will be armor coating and doing our general maintenance as we always do. But yeah, we can certainly
Yeah, I would
start
say
looking at that.
that's within our control. Just, you know, if it gets to the point where, hey, they're ready to roll on that, and we have to push it back, that's a great problem to have.
Absolutely.
If that's on time, but
That is true.
something tells me that's not gonna be the case.
I feel like they have money they're ready to spend at the state level.
I would find a different place to spend it than us.
So for the plan, I guess we're looking for an adoption of resolution to adopt the plan. If any of you see any amendments, we can certainly discuss those and make those here.
Because I'd reach out to Kevin, where he drives them every day, and what, I know he probably fit down and help put together this map and stuff, and
Well, your First Street needs it for sure, probably, I just figured the emergency route probably ought to be our main objective, that's just my thought. Pine Street, Harrington Street, First Street are the worst ones. That First Street's probably one of the most traveled streets in town, so it definitely needs fixed.
now if we, you know, this is kind of off this paving district due, but back to, the widening that a little bit, will we
See,
go to
that-
redo that?
That's something else for you to kick around too, because I don't think you're gonna be able to widen that a heck of a lot. You know, you're supposed to go on both sides, take so much on both sides, but you're not gonna be able to do anything with CDA.
But that's where that study will come in,
Yeah.
to see if we can do that, but that's.
Because there's not enough room on that
One six
south side
we're on, so.
to, you're gonna be right up against their building.
Yeah, they are right on the property line.
If you go the other way and take the full 6 foot or whatever it is, you're gonna be taking quite a few of the yards out, so. You know, it's just something you're gonna have to look into, and if they'll let you go, by chance, go the same width that it is now,
Yeah.
I don't know if that's possible.
I don't have any other questions on
Any
it.
other comments?
The flood repair work, was all that done prior to the last year, or that's not part of the completed projects, or?
It is, I mean, yeah, correct. It's
So we're-
not on the 6-year plan. Those would have already been.
No, right, but on the previous report of previous year highway or street improvement, it's got the 3 projects of 2021, but I don't see them, I don't see what, it's just got project numbers. Can you tell me what those 3 were that were completed?
I think, well, pretty much all we did last year was armor coating. So,
It's that Form 11, report of previous year highway or street
yeah, it
improvement.
is just numbers, isn't it? What-
Yeah, I just wondered what those 3 projects were that you
Kevin, do you
completed,
remember what
8,123 and 267. I wouldn't think 267 was armor coat, or 123,000.
No, it wasn't, but, do you remember what streets off the top of your head we armor coated this last
Just last,
fall?
I don't even need that so much as what the 2 bigger projects were that are on that previous year completion date. Completion date 2021, 10396B, 103-108, and 103-114. I just was curious what 108 and 114 were, one of them Harrington Street. I'm just thinking if those were still flood repairs.
Well, technically, we had finished those in 2020.
In 20, okay. Well, I was just curious what those 2 were that were listed as completed in 21 at 123,000 and 267.
I guess I'd have to go back and compare it to the numbers on last year's map, just to know what Lloyd had documented there, but in 2021, in terms of what the city paid for in that fiscal year, was armor coating, which would have probably been on the 1-year plan. And then the major improvements from the flooding would have been finished and paid for in 2020. And that would have been that block of Harrington and that half block of
Third.
2nd Street between Maple and Oak, and then some work up on 7th
Third Street,
Avenue
yeah.
around the,
3rd Street
Around
between
the
Maple and Oak,
islands.
right?
yeah, 3rd Street, excuse me.
But I didn't know if those were the 2 that are listed here. I just couldn't think of anything last year that would have been $267,000 that was completed in 21.
Yeah, well, we did what, $65,000 worth of armor coating?
yeah,
Approximately, probably.
that
So,
was probably them, the flood deals, what I would imagine.
I can certainly get back to you, Greg,
Okay, I was just
In the
curious what
morning
those
or
2,
something
what
and
those
let
2
you know.
were.
what those are.
I mean, that was my guess, is they were probably Harrington and 3rd Street on the flood repairs that he just listed in 21 as completion instead of 20, but,
Well, our contract with Tri-State Paving would have been right in there at that $270,000 mark.
so that's probably what those are then.
Any other public comments? I'd like to close the hearing before they vote.
Probably.
All right, then I'm gonna we'll close the public hearing at 5:13.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 22-01, the 1-6-year street improvement program.
Second.
Motion and second, any other discussion? Going to call roll.
Sean,
Aye.
Brad,
Yes.
Vance.
Motion carried unanimously. Move on to old business and consider our purchase of the 2022 Heil multi-pack garbage truck and toter containers for a total cost of $483,253.40.
So at the January meeting, we tabled this item to discuss whether or not we needed some comparable bids. So we had the one bid from the Queen Equipment, which is what's presented again. And I had mentioned at the meeting in January that, to my knowledge, there wasn't another manufacturer that made a comparable truck. And so I following the meeting, I reached back out to McQueen Equipment, and so there's a letter to the council in the packet from McQueen indicating that yes, there is no other truck like this one on the market that does both a rear load and a side load. So there really isn't any comparable bids to be had. In addition to that, the bid that was given by McQueen was through Sourcewell. And Sourcewell is an organization that's kind of like a cooperative government purchasing pool. They work to procure, kind of like a state bid almost, a similar concept. They preface through procurement services to get government bids on various types of services and products and equipment. And then the dealers can then quote those prices back down to the local governments. So the price that was bid originally through McQueen was through Sourcewell procured bidding. And Rod and I had talked about this a little bit. I don't know, Rod, if you have anything more to add?
Well, apparently this Sourcewell is a company that governmental entities can use to almost pool bids and get the best bid of anywhere's around. And if Sourcewell had already done that to get this bid, so, and if it's the only company that makes this machine, and there's no other comparable machines, and this is the one that we want, it looks like to me that it's futile to try to bid it out. And I don't think it'd be necessary anyway.
Well, that being the case, we're really looking for just a go-ahead here to order the truck tonight. We still have time to decide on payment options. There's, I think, a variety of ways to go. So really, we're just kind of wanting to confirm what we've been talking about for the last few months here. So.
And it has been budgeted for, so, you know, that's one consideration, you know, in terms of not knowing how you're paying for it. That's a controllable item within either debt service, ARPA, or rates. Either way, it's covered in the budget, so it's not like we would have to be borrowing funds to make that purchase. But yes, if, according to McQueen, at this point, probably if we order a truck, it wouldn't be delivered until 2023 anyway. So you're looking at potentially even a new fiscal year at that time, so there's time to work those details out if that's what you decide to do.
I take it the two that were available are gone now? Because then at one point, they had two on hand that we could get.
I haven't confirmed that with him, but that would be my suspicion based off of our last conversation, was they were going pretty quickly.
Even last month, wasn't it? Gonna be
It was gonna
fall
be
yet.
August, September.
Still in the fall, yeah.
But now, even though they won't order till then, that price is still.
Right, it locks the price in, correct, yeah.
I'll make a motion to purchase well, here it says a 2022 Healy multi-pack garbage truck and 75 toters, containers for a combined cost of $483,253.40. Was that?
750
Oh, 750 toters. Well, if it's only 75, I get one.
I don't know, we might have to draw sticks or something.
Got a motion?
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Any other discussion? Go ahead
want me to put that as a begrudging one there, Vance, with
Yeah.
that invitation, or?
Yeah. I mean, my still concern, and I hope for the guys, it's not too much to staff. I think there should be some financing options to where we actually maybe can, it looked like in last month, I didn't see it this month, but maybe there's options to extend it out even a little bit longer to where cash flow wise, we could be ahead of where even J&J would be throughout the lease term. So that kind of push it over, but I'd say get an ad out now for a staff person if it's gonna be here in 2023, so. That's my main concern is, and we've said we're gonna get somebody to staff it, but so if it's gonna be here a year from now, we better start putting that out, so.
That was my biggest concern too as well, is the staffing concern with this, of us doing it in-house and finding, just one person can staff it, instead of two. We have to have two people staff it. It's really gonna throw our figures off when we're trying to vote on this. And so, but the reason I'm going with keeping it in-house is the majority of the people that called me in the community was in favor of keeping it in-house. Myself, I was leaning more towards bidding it out, but the majority of people in the community called me and said they want to keep it in-house, so that's the direction I'm going.
Yeah, all we can do is give it our best shot.
Yeah.
We'll make it work.
I'm still for J&J, but I was outvoted, so I'm just going with the flow now, so.
I feel bad for you, you don't feel lonely down there without Skylar.
That's why I left my coat here, so
You've been through.
looks like somebody's supposed to be there.
Okay, thanks, guys, that's been, there's still a road to go, but we're making progress, or we're moving ahead. Appreciate it. Moving on to the regular agenda, consider a proposal from Top Coat Inc. for 2022 armor coating. Maybe you saw the information in your packet on it, or Lisa's got it.
Yeah, and I did look back, a year ago, it was $1.18 per square yard, so it has gone up a little. According to Dan, it's gonna keep going up because it is an oil-based product, so he's anticipating that the longer time goes, the higher that price is gonna get. So if you decide to do this tonight, it will lock that price in. Top Coat is the one who we have typically used in the past.
It's $1.36, right?
Yeah.
And this is just for that price per yard, we can still determine as the year goes on how much or.
Correct, I think we budgeted again, it's about $60,000 to $65,000, that's typically what we keep in the budget every year, and so that does us, about 15 to 20 blocks
Yeah.
typically. So,
You gotta figure your gravel too,
they usually come in September?
Yeah, pretty much, just whenever they get down out west.
So, by the time, the thaw comes out of the streets, we can see what the condition is. The street department will start working on patching, and so the worst streets obviously will be the target for the armor coating.
So it's this price plus gravel, right?
Right.
You have an estimate on what gravel runs,
We have gravel, we usually budget about $7,000 a year for gravel. Some years we spend it, some years we don't, because we have sweepings that we keep back and.
Well, we have a little bit of gravel left from last year, but not a lot.
not enough to cover this many blocks though, right? Than what we're doing for armor coating.
Right.
So we'll have to buy some gravel to
Yeah.
finish this many square yards. But not an estimate of what gravel is per yard.
Yeah, I wouldn't have a clue. I have to call Glenn up and ask him.
I don't think we've ever gone over
No.
that proportion of 65,000 for armor coat to 7,000 gravel, we've never exceeded that.
That's a lot to clean up. Anyway, that's a plenty to clean up towards the winter, fall.
Are there any questions from the council on this item?
make a motion to accept Top Coat's bid for 2022 Armor Coat for $36.8 for the upcoming year. Did I say that right?
I think so. Good enough.
How many
We got
times?
the numbers.
Motion and a second, any other discussion? Go ahead and call the roll.
Vance,
Aye.
Sean, Brad,
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously. Next item is discussion of the ambulance fund, and Ann's here to visit with us about that.
Thank you for putting me on the agenda tonight. I just wanted to kind of keep you abreast of what's going on with that project. We do expect the new ambulance April or May, and obviously, nothing is gonna get done before then. But I did get a quote from Green Gables. Was the only one that was able to present a quote to us at this point. We got two different sizes. One's a 40 by 60, which is a little bit bigger than what we're in right now. Would house all three ambulances for roughly $316. And then we also quoted a 40 by 100 to allow for a little extra room in the north side for fire department, which would come under their expense, and that is in the range of $436,000 for the 40 by 100.
What was that first one, Ann? The 40 by 60?
316, actually probably closer to 317, rounding up,
1,000.
yes.
I like $316.
And,
We'll take 12.
Those all just steel buildings?
yes, he would be able to tie into the current fire hall and conjoin them. There would still be a wall in between, but towards the back, the north end, then there would be the pass-through and the doors for equipment and personnel to get through. Shared bathrooms, so no expected new plumbing. Trying to keep it a very basic building, heating, cooling in it, of course, for the products that we carry that would need that. And I would imagine that, you know, they're willing to work with us on a timeline. Now, of course, how do we afford this? I don't have any great ideas for you tonight. I know Tracy Ganser is talking about a grant program. I don't know if you can remember the name of it, but there's a new grant program out there that's maybe gonna afford some monies towards fire and ambulance for these kind of projects, so she's looking into that. I expect to be working with her over the next couple weeks to get figures to her. Also, the NCDC is going to be trying to help us get some grant monies through the USDA projects and grants that way. So I'm reaching out now that we have some figures that we can work with to try to find some funding for this project. What's gonna happen in the meantime, that ambulance is gonna come in, I'll be visiting with the county commissioners at the next meeting to appraise them of this project and the costs of it. And what they wanna do with the fourth ambulance, our third one that has been kind of our backup, selling it or whatever they choose to do with that piece of equipment of theirs. And how we're going to fit these in the barn is going to be interesting. We have cattle guards on the front of them, I should call them deer guards. Probably won't be able to put the deer guard on the new one, maybe even have to take it off the current one, that when they sit stacked in there, in order to get them to even fit in the barn, would be the closest idea I could come up with, so they could all be housed. If they still won't fit that way, then we're gonna have to look for some sort of building to keep at least one in, the reserve ambulance in, so I might have to come back to you and ask you if you had any room somewhere for that. And we'd have to troubleshoot that. This is kind of an update on the situation of the ambulance. We have personnel, but it's getting harder during the days especially to find adequate coverage, people to respond. Just would encourage the public to look around and see if there's anybody they can forward on to their workplaces during the day to at least even show up to drive, something like that. We're taking applications currently. The status in the area is such that with the COVID mandates of vaccination, several ambulance members choosing not to vaccinate have fallen away from the ambulance services in the surrounding counties. A couple weeks ago, we were called to see if we could go pick up a 911 call in Kilgore because Valentine didn't have a crew to go. So that's taken our ambulance out of our county for over 3 hours to get that patient. We did not have to make that call. They scrambled together somehow a crew to go pick them up. Springview is frequently in that situation. Blaine County is calling on us, or we are on reserve for them because they're low. Rock County Hospital, haven't heard too much out of them. It's these hospital county-owned, that are owned by the hospitals that have to comply with the vaccine mandate that's making their people fall away. We are a standalone ambulance. We are all inclusive in ourselves. We aren't part of the fire department. We're standalone, so we don't have to, at this point, comply with those vaccine mandates. If we do, we will likely lose membership that way as well. Or we're going to have to figure out a deal with the hospital of, we can bring the patient to the door and they can pick them up at the door and take them in. Or a vaccinated member can go in with the patient. But it's creating a crunch across the state. I was at the state EMS board meeting on Friday last week, and running into the same issue statewide with this issue of ambulance services, volunteers especially falling by the wayside and having to do some extra long transports just for 911 calls. So just wanted to bring you aware of that situation. It's a little bit frightful out there. It was before all this, so. But we've got a good crew and they're very dedicated, so it just throwing it out there for the public to get involved if they can, if they have any time to share during the daytime. That's when we seem to be hurting for help and on transfers, so appreciate your time. If you have any questions.
Any questions?
What's the size of your current building? Do you, I don't know if you said that.
It's, well, I don't know if I know the exact size, but it's gonna
40
run.
by 50.
But
40 by 50.
40 by 50, okay, thank you.
And then this would basically be in that.
Pretty much on the same footprint.
Okay, you tear down and rebuild right in the same.
If we go a little larger with the help of the fire department, it would extend it to the north end of the pavement up there.
And those bids are including tearing out the existing, and tearing out the existing concrete and putting back everything new and tying on to the east side of both these figures, either the 40 by 60 or the 40 by 100. Same east wall of the fire building. The fire hall is high enough that the pitch of the ceiling will just tie right into that ceiling and just bring that, keep on coming down that pitch.
So this is only for 3 walls.
This is only for 3 walls.
And did Green Gable not want to try to extend and meet roof lines, or is that their reasoning for wanting to rebuild, tear down and rebuild? Because didn't we talk about maybe that they would just extend and try to match roof line?
That's what this is.
That is what this is.
Extend the.
Well, this is tearing out the existing one and just extending.
Right, the existing
From the fire hall.
ambulance.
Yeah. Well, no, this is
Near the
existing.
fire.
yeah, fire hall, yeah.
Any other questions? Thanks, Ann.
Yes, thank you.
Next item is a discussion of utility service line repair. And Levi has some comments he'd like to address the council.
Yes. On December 28th, I had my sewer ran because it was plugged up, which I understand, it happens. But on January 27th, it was plugged again, and everyone on my block piggybacks off the other sewer. So when it plugs up down south of me, or north of me, then it runs back into my place. So right now it's plugged. I do not have a snake long enough to get to it. John from Lytle's Plumbing is supposed to be coming and running it. He's waiting for a new cable because his broke. So every time the neighbors do laundry, it shoots out of my toilet, which causes raw sewage for me to clean up. I would like to, if there's a way that we could get put in, to have a main put in, so, because right now everyone shares a 3-inch clay pipe. So it's not really big enough, but for one house, and we have 4 houses on that pipe. And I understand I could put a clean out in it, in my yard, and dig it up. That's just a Band-Aid on the problem. Which I understand if we need to go that route until we can get something put in, I'm fine with that. But for me to run a new line out to the sewer on 5th Street, because there's no main on Oak, I have to cross that existing line, and I don't know how I would be able to keep the right slope with everything, because it's so far inland to the buildings. Right now, it's only 3 feet off the buildings. So I'm asking, what can we do to fix this permanently, rather than keep putting Band-Aids on something that's failing?
Right. Well, I mean, my understanding from what I've gathered since I talked to you on the phone that day, looked into it more, and I mean, that 3-inch line, that shared line is, that's all a private line. That's not city line, correct?
Correct.
And so, I mean, we really get into a situation where the city's responsibility typically ends with the mains, and that the landowners are
But my
responsible.
question is what's considered to be a main? I mean, is a main where, or, I mean, we have 4 houses that are connected with one drop into the sewer. And it's that way on both sides of the street.
Mhm. You know, and
Is there a way that we could get a main put in to where we don't have this problem anymore? I mean, I paid to have it $200 to have it ran. It made it 28, 29 days and it backed up. I'm the little man on the totem pole, so I'm the one that gets all the sewage. Last time I had 4 inches in my basement that I had to clean up. Not real fun. Now it's blowing out my toilet, and I'm still the one that has to clean it up. And I can't afford to pay $200 every month to have that sewer ran. And I don't know how I would run a new one without crossing that one, and I can't change the elevation of it because it won't drain. It'll cause a sag, and then I'll be right back to having to run it all the time. And I've talked to the other landowners on my side of the street, and everybody is willing to, if you guys could put a main in, we're willing to pay to have it tied into the new main.
well, you know, I think that as far as a new main, that would be a possibility. That would be a long-term thing. It'd be I assume it would take a look at the entire system, because that's not, obviously that's not the only street in town where there's not a main access. So it would be a long-term thing, I think. And I couldn't guarantee that they would decide, yeah, we need to have a main in that block.
I understand that it's a long-term deal, but I mean, when it backs up and somebody does laundry, I mean, would you want to be sitting on the pot when it shoots water up? Because I sure don't.
No.
I mean, it's quite disgusting to have to clean up.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
Well, really, the only other two solutions, Levi, are, you named them. I mean, that'd be the
Correct.
putting in a clean out so that you have access to snake it more easily.
Right, I
Or-
understand that,
Or
but
connecting into the main on Fifth, which would require a new service installation.
but for me to connect it into Fifth, I have to cross that existing one. That existing line right now is 3 feet off the front of the houses.
Yeah, and I don't know, cause I'm not,
And I mean-
to know what kind of.
How many feet do you get when you say you snake it? How many feet do you get before you hit a plug?
Right now, it's at last time they ran it, it was at 105 feet before it hit a plug.
Have you marked that off to know where that's at?
105 feet is in Merrill's yard. From where they cleaned up, from where they went in my sewer and ran it, I've measured it out, and it's 140 feet to the main on Fifth Street.
And it's gonna get,
Just to run my section of it.
it's gonna get worse because my house is in the middle of remodelation, so we don't even have a person in that one yet. So on the 4 houses, right now, there's only 3 living in them. So when I add a 4th person to it, it's just gonna get worse.
And to Mom's property, south edge of her property is 255 feet.
And see, when I had it before, when I had a person in it, we were snaking that every 60 days. We had to have Lidl's come every 60 days to 75 days to unplug it. Because one drains into the other and the other, you know what I mean? It's just like we're all connected into one area.
Yeah, and why that was done that way?
I don't know,
I have
but
no
I,
idea. I mean,
I'm like Levi, it's like,
we certainly don't
there
allow
needs to be a
that.
main of some
now.
sort in there, even if it's going out to the, you know, in the middle of the street like all the others. It's just, I mean, it's gross. I
And
mean,
we've had requests of recent builds and situations for people to do that. We don't allow that anymore for those reasons. I mean, if the city has a say.
and our thing is, we pay our water and sewer every month, you know, it's like, then we gotta pay this extra to have it cleaned up.
I haven't been able to flush a toilet over there in 2 weeks because the line's full.
Yeah.
When you had it staked back in December, what did they bring back?
There was flushables and a little bit of tree root.
Okay, so I think you kind of answered your question for now until if the council wants to do something, you gotta put a clean out there to get that going.
Right, and I don't have a problem doing that, but that is a short-term fix.
Correct.
I would like to have a long-term fix where I'm not having to go out there once a month and rotor it so it doesn't keep coming in my house.
It's almost something like you need to get with the neighbors, the adjacent landowners, because this is all on the private side, and get that 3-inch main all new into PVC, so the roots, it'll flow better, just change that one, but that's all still gonna be in,
It's in Claiborne right now.
yeah, it needs to be probably all dug up and all put into PVC new. That's still on the public side and not on the city side.
How do
And
you-
I don't think we can set a precedence of paying for public side, because then we're gonna have everybody coming in and say, my sewer's backed up and I want you to pay for it.
It sounds like a
It's
design
4.5
problem
feet.
to me, in terms of it's too much for the size of the pipe potentially. But
Yeah,
I think
just
that's
wasn't a
the
good
shortest term solution. Wherever you start to have a blockage in that line, cut that out. I don't care if it's that far or how far, cut it out and put a clean out in it.
You have
That
a
will
lot of
get you
mature
for the
trees
time
right
being.
there, so I'm sure there's a lot of roots in
Yeah.
that
And
one.
once and that old clay pipe,
Yeah,
that's common for that clay pipe to, with tree roots hit that and it'll destroy it.
just to, like
So-
disintegrates it.
I understand that you're saying that it's not the city's, kind of not the city's problem, but, so then is everybody on that block gonna have to pay? Cause like Mom's would be 255 foot of pipe to just run from Hearst down to Fifth Street. So Is every person on that block gonna have to run a new sewer line then?
To fix that problem, yeah, they probably will. As long as it's on the landowner side and not the city's. Now, if it was backed up in the middle of the street and stuff like that, and it would be the city's problem. But it sounds like everything is done is from the curb to the house is where the problem is.
Does it go under any porches or anything like that?
Right now, it's underneath Merrill's ramp.
Okay, around.
It runs, Patty Finley's runs right underneath the corner of my porch on the south side. And then I do not know exactly 100% where the rest of them run. I just know they all daisy chain together. It's not a good deal.
Recipe for disaster.
Do you feel the cost would be much different if at some point the city had a main out on the west side of whatever street?
Oak Street.
Oak Street.
Everybody would have to run their own line there, all 4 houses.
And
Is that
then-
gonna be much different cost than if all 4 landowners got together and designed the proper sizing and all hooked into one down to the other street? And did a joint project? To me,
I
it
mean-
seems like it would be about the same footage, more or less.
I don't know on that, because I mean, if you tied all 4 houses in together, it needs to be a larger pipe. I mean,
That's what I'm
It's-
saying, because they're all tied together now, right?
they're all tied together with a
And
small
it's-
pipe.
But you don't want too large a pipe either.
Right.
Maybe 6 inch or, you know.
I was thinking if it was 6 inch, it would probably keep from happening.
Yeah.
And I know that I have a tree that's in the way if it got put on the city easement, I'm willing to take that tree out. But Merrill does not want to lose his trees, which I can understand. And he's got 2 big maples in his front yard. It's in the city right away.
He's on the corner, north corner house?
Yes,
I think did his own a few years ago.
yep, he capped off of it because he got tired of
Yeah,
this
he
problem.
capped off it and went in, Mike Lane at the time, put it right to Fifth Street. So he's not on that line.
He already fixed his problem.
Yeah, 10 years ago, or, I don't know how long ago it was.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I know that he had it capped and he went off into Fifth Street, but he only had to cross his own yard, where we have to cross everybody's yard.
Those really are the solutions. I mean, you laid them out.
Right.
It's that, or
Well-
the only other alternative, as we've already mentioned, is that, you know, a new main be installed between the manhole on basically on the corner of Fourth and Oak, and then extend it to the manhole on Fifth and Oak, and then you're tearing out the street, so it's a street project also. So it's not a small undertaking, I guess is the point.
And I understand that.
Yeah,
But if you, say if mom ran a new line all the way from her house all the way to Fifth Street, that's 255 feet long. I mean, who's got a snake that long? You'd have to go put cleanouts in all your neighbors' yards to even be able to access it.
yeah.
You need about 3.
So pretty much everybody's yard would have to have several cleanouts. Like my yard would have to have 4 in it. So it'd have one for myself and one for each house up the line, because you'd have to run.
Well, ideally, each house would have their own clean out, so that if
Right.
any house on the line had an issue and they called a plumber,
Correct,
that
so
plumber
you-
could snake it or cut
So
it.
if it all got dug in at once, you'd have 4 cleanouts right side by side. Because it's too far of a stretch for the last person on the house on the end, which Dwayne Anderson owns, through Mom's, through Patty Finley's, through mine, that their stretch is 255 feet long.
Well, you shouldn't have to run a new line for every one. If you're gonna dig it up, you'd probably still do the same concept we have now, but if you have like 4 inch, maybe move it up to an 8 inch, which would handle all the flow and still have the one line, right, Brad?
You don't wanna go too big,
Say
Or-
because then your water goes, your
Okay.
solid state.
Or go, but just
You
go
have a
bigger,
problem.
so it handles it.
6 inch, I'd say 6 the
6
max.
inch, and then still have the same concept, everybody still ties into that one, and then you'd have a clean out in each yard, which is the fastest for everybody.
The clean out is really the issue. You don't have a clean out anywhere on that line.
There's no clean out on the line other
You've
than,
got trees all the way along the way. It's an old line.
And I've been amazed, I've been here 29 years, and to my knowledge, this is the first that I've been made aware of this problem on that side. Of course, your house was vacant for
my house didn't have water hooked up for 26 years.
26, okay.
And I spent 2 nights cleaning out my line with tree roots.
I was gonna say, I'm sure it's just.
And-
true.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I spent 2 nights and cleaned it out. I took out a 55-gallon drum of tree roots. But once we got it into the other lines, because the first time it backed up, I thought, all right, it plugged down the line and I had it ran. But here we are where it keeps backing up.
Yeah, I feel for you. I'm sorry that you're having that problem. I really am. There's- I mean, those two options that we laid out would be the most immediate relief for you. You know,
Correct,
clean
and
out.
I'll put a clean out in, but is there a way that we could put a main in so it's done properly rather than Band-Aided together? Is what I'm asking. I mean, a clean out's just a Band-Aid is all it is.
Well, it is until you have a PVC line anyway. I mean, even if the city puts a new main in, you're gonna have to install a PVC service line.
I understand that. And I don't have a problem digging up my yard and changing out to a PVC pipe. But the problem I have is where somebody flushes something down the toilet and it goes down and it plugs and then it backs up into me every single time.
How close is your sewer line to your water line?
My,
Right on top?
my sewer line is ran right underneath this. My sewer line, the sewer line that connects everyone else's house is right now like 2 inches above my water line.
That's
Where it
the way they
crosses
did- That's the way
underneath.
they did that back then, they just touched, you can't do that now, you got, like, say, 4 feet apart, but back then, here's a sewer line, here's a water line. That's how they did that.
My water line goes underneath that, it X's. So when I dug in my water line, I ran it as deep as I could and it goes underneath, it just crosses, you know, that one 4-inch piece and goes straight across and in the house.
So Levi, you're asking the city to install a main on the street.
On Oak,
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't
Between
know my
doors.
streets. I didn't grow up here, I don't know my streets.
Perfect. yeah.
Okay, if that's your request, clearly, we're gonna need a lot more information for the council to even consider that.
okay?
And so,
The-
we will try to develop some numbers so that, and see what it would even take. Like I said, it may take an entire study of the city's system, because that's not the only spot that doesn't have a line. But we'll look into it.
Okay.
There's no way we can make
And I
that decision
understand that.
tonight.
And I understand that.
And-
I came into this
And
with
you
an open
understand
mind.
that you do
It's
have
just-
some other options in terms of going down, you know, that would be the city's preferred option, is if you could work with the neighbors or run it out to your right of way and run down to,
I can't run it out to my right of way without hitting the other sewer pipe, that's the problem.
You're saying you
that
definitely have
pipe
to do
works
them all
though? I thought
together.
that pipe.
We'd have to do them all
work.
together.
Oh, that needs to be replaced.
Does that pipe even work? I mean,
Well,
I
with
thought the
that-
one you're worried about hitting is always plugged.
Correct, but it feeds the next 3 houses.
You're saying it plugs downstream?
It plugs downstream in Merrill's yard and then comes back up the pipe in mine. So for where I would have to fix it, I'd have to go dig up the neighbor's yard, and it's literally 3 feet off of his house.
I guess I don't understand. I'd have to look at a map.
I get what
It
you're
seems
saying.
to me if you're cutting it off, you can plug it and nothing's gonna back up to you. You've got your own line and you're clear sailing.
But I have to cross what's already existing for everyone else's.
If you lower it too much or raise it too much, if you raise it, you might get right back now. If you lower it, you're going too fast.
Yeah, I
Who knows
understand
what
that. I thought the line that you're cutting is already plugged, so.
No. Well, it is plugged downstream of me, but for me to go across it, I have to put a swell in mine, which is gonna cause problems. They have to be laid out side by side, and you would have to virtually replace everyone's line up the street to do it.
At any rate, I mean, we'll look into it. I guess that's all we can do. I don't think anybody's of a notion to vote to build a sewer line tonight.
And I understand that.
So appreciate your, well, I mean, yeah, that doesn't sound like a fun thing to deal with at all. But we'll see what the options are from the city's side.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next item is to discuss and consider the continuance of the flashing school signals in the Highway 20 project. And basically, I mean, my understanding is they will be putting in crosswalks with push buttons, so there'll be, when kids want to cross, or old people like me want to cross, push the button, you get a red light to cross the street. And so the suggestion, or the question is, do we need to have the flashing yellow lights for slowing traffic? I believe there's going to be 3 crossings. One here at the community center, one down, and one at the highway set. But we're considering the flashing lights. Do we need those to continue, or if we have the push button crosswalks, can we let those go? Apparently those are operated by the city or owned
Yeah,
by the
it's my
city.
understanding the current lights we have are the city's.
There used to be a light out here, right on this one by Allen's and Co-op. right?
Yeah,
They
years
used to
ago,
have-
there was push button
Used to have a light,
crosswalks.
and it was a
Yeah,
green, red light,
yeah.
yeah.
So I don't know
I
when
don't
they did
remember when
away
they
with
took that
those.
out, I don't, yeah.
But then at some point down the line, and apparently the city installed the ones that are on the timers. They flash in the mornings when school begins, and in the afternoon when school ends, and then over the noon hour.
I
when
don't
kids
see why
have-
we need, if we're gonna have the word, the push button, 'cause I'm sure you push the button, it's gonna turn yellow, and it's gonna turn red. So I don't think you would need those flashing lights. As I was talking to the mayor and Lisa earlier today, kind of one of the first meetings I came to listen in, when Larry Rice was still mayor, he was indicating that he liked to see, and brought up about getting on the east side of town and the west side of town, speed limit signs, where it has a radar on there and it tells you how fast you're going. To me, you know, you go through several communities, and those get your attention when you're speeding, and it flashes at you that you're speeding. I'd like to see those also in this project on both the east and the west side of Ainsworth, but also have these push button ones. I think you could really slow your traffic down. As far as this, what we're trying to do tonight, I don't think we would need continuing flashing lights during those school times. I think that's when they flash is during, when school goes in the morning, and then when they get out in the afternoon,
No, we're gonna do that.
and over the noon hour is when they're flashing.
Yeah, the big difference is the current flashing lights, when they're flashing, you're supposed to reduce your speed to 25 miles an
I
hour.
don't think that happens.
I don't know that it does either, but,
I think it happens more than you think in
I-
those hours.
It's a good reminder, cause I, you know,
I think it's,
driving up and down the Highway 20, you see them flashing, and it's a reminder, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be at 25.
especially where it's a time conditional zone, right?
great. So the flip side of the argument was that, well, if you've got all these flashing lights going on, you get kind of blind to them and maybe you disregard them. That was one argument that was made.
So with this new design, you're gonna have 3 red lights potentially.
I don't know that they're
In
red.
town?
But it's some kind of a yellow or red. It's a signal, basically, to
I would
say.
assume-
Oh, it's not an overhead stop, stop all traffic to let somebody cross type
My
of thing.
understanding was it was just a signal light, that it wasn't gonna be a stop traffic. It's like a flashing,
someone's
someone's
out there.
trying to cross.
Someone's slowing down,
Oh,
okay.
I was thinking of the red, yellow, green, but I figured.
No, my understanding from Carl and Mark was it'll just be like a flashing to alert you that somebody's wanting to cross.
Okay.
I guess I like the fact of knowing one that is 25 versus the 35. And if someone's there, they're trying to slow down from 25 rather than 35 mile an hour, hopefully. They're not in a good school zone, might be 55, who knows who's driving. But, I guess, well, how much does it take to keep them as flashing lights, or is it more
So I
just?
think what started the concern or the question has to do with an electrical pole. So there's a pole down on the corner there of Fourth and Oak, basically where Little Myers live. And the whole purpose of that electrical pole is to service that flashing signal that's there. So the question being in the Highway 20 project, do we need the pole, do we not need the pole, you know? And, if it's only servicing the flashing light, we don't want the flashing light, we don't need the pole, right? So that was kind of what started the question, because once they remove that pole, then there is no access to the electrical for the sign. So they said it doesn't necessarily matter to DOT, it's just what the city prefers. How many flashing lights do you want on Highway 20, I suppose is the big question.
Would you drop the speed limit to 25 or just keep it then at 35 and then have flashing lights for people to,
It would not be a reduced speed, it would be
okay.
just 35. And so, and then if you paired that with potentially a radar speed sign, if the city wanted to substitute that, it wouldn't still reduce the speed, but it'll at least alert you to. So anyway,
So if
you
we-
can keep them, we can get rid of them, it's kind of
I
just.
kind of
what-
like the idea of having them, because me, myself, coming down the highway every day, when you see them, it just kind of reminds you to look twice, Slow down a little bit and look twice and see if there is anybody crosswalk or wanting to cross.
If you kept the flashing lights, would you have a reduced speed to 25 if you kept
it would
the lights the
stay-
way they currently are? Would you keep a 25 mile per hour when flashing
Mhm.
sign? Because really, that's your difference. If you don't have
It is
them,
the
your
big
traffic's
difference,
going
yeah.
35. If you do have them in those times, you're dropping people down to 25. I don't know that it's a bad idea to drop it down to 25 and through there when
Yeah.
kids are out of school, because you got a pile of them crossing.
This is really, we use this.
Well, especially
building-
now when they come to this building, the middle school,
Yeah, this,
for
I think
practice.
this is
Well,
almost
the-
busier than a
Yeah.
block west.
The light will actually be, my understanding is it will be on the other side on the west side of the street. So it'll be over by Park Homes, is where the crosswalk will be. But, regardless.
So these
They're
are
also gonna
flashing
take-
lights that'll hang above the highway?
I haven't seen a picture of what the light will actually look like, just from verbal descriptions. I guess the picture I had in my head was it was just gonna be kind of like a beacon light on the end of a pole that would flash.
It's on the side
Yeah.
more than above.
Oh.
Okay.
It wouldn't necessarily be like hanging over the driving
Yeah.
lane,
Because I remember before it got tore down, the one on Main Street,
but I could be wrong.
it was, it flashed, it was red north and south, east and west was yellow, and
How many people
amazing
stop that?
how many, especially out-of-town people coming down Highway 20 would stop at that flashing yellow light.
Waiting for it to turn red.
Yeah, and I can see, if it was hanging out over the street, then every 2-3 blocks, you'd have people stopping.
I'll bet it's like,
And
I
like-
know I've seen in Lincoln, like the bike trail that runs through town, there's some that are a little bit more blind, they'll crosswalk. And then if there's, and I think there's a motion where it's back ways, if someone's crossed it, it'll start flashing real, just, it's not a required stop, I don't think.
It's more of an
Except for,
alert, like
I guess
a
pedestrians
caution.
always have the right of way.
So your
Yield.
flashing lights would be,
It's
it's similar locations to where they are now, and you'd reduce your speed to
And
25
I mean, I
on
could
those.
be wrong, it could be an overhead light, but,
I would-
because I haven't seen an actual visual of what that's gonna look like, but.
For no more than those are flashing, it's probably not a bad idea to reduce your speeds through there.
I think it's good, especially for me where I'm not, I don't have kids in
Wouldn't
the
it be-
system or anything, I forget.
And it's not
what day
it's
of
not
school, you know, it's a good
unusual.
reminder for me, oh, kids are gonna be around.
Yeah, and it's not unusual. Other towns drop, even on highways, drop that down like that in school, you know, basically when it's school, we don't call them school zones, but when there's pedestrian traffic from school. You wouldn't be out of the ordinary to do it that way.
When you have deals like this, wouldn't it be beneficial to maybe have somebody from the state, you know, come to the meeting so you could say, okay, this is what we're considering, you know, whether we need this or not? And then that way, if you guys have questions, you could ask them, what's this gonna look like? Maybe they don't know either, I don't know.
Carl Hard had come to the office and visited with myself and a little bit with Joel. I guess we didn't know that it would be necessary to have him here at the time.
No, but going into
Yeah.
this down the road, there's gonna be other questions.
I did call the school and ask them if they knew of any regulations. But Dale wasn't, he checked up and wasn't aware of anything more up to the highway
Yeah.
folks.
Again, the main difference really is just the speed limit reduction.
Mhm.
I mean, either way, that's what you're losing, I guess, if you take it out.
Yeah, I think
And
that's
then-
what did this, slowing traffic down.
Car-
If they tried to slow traffic down, I should say.
I guess I'm different than all you guys, because I always consider it a nuisance. Seems like I drive down there and they're flashing and I have never
Just
seen
when
it.
it's flashing.
I gotta slow down for air, you know, but I drive slow, so I don't really care. It's fine.
You know, I think I see probably more local people slow down, but, you know, I see a lot of semis that come through here.
Yeah,
You guys probably see it more being in the office here, these semis going through here, and
Well, and that's one of the reasons why
they don't
I
slow
feel like
down.
I argued pretty hard early on for the crosswalk signals for that reason, because we sit there and
I
watch.
personally have walked out and into the middle of the street to get traffic to stop, because kids were trying to cross and traffic just kept on going, so I've actually walked outside. And yeah, the truck traffic
And
is
we've seen
ridiculous.
other parents, you know, that are cognizant, you know,
Yeah.
also stop in the middle of the
Yes.
highway, get out of their vehicle, you know, and flag traffic. I mean, we've seen, you know,
But we
some
have kids that come up here every day almost, every day, as long as there's school, they're up here.
There you go, when you redo the countywide law enforcement, put in there that you want a police officer to direct traffic in the afternoon, in the
Make a note
mornings
of
and
that, Rod.
afternoons. See how that would fly.
really well, I think.
they'd probably bring us an orange
Oh.
vest.
Yeah.
There's not the possibility though of going back to an overhead stop. And I would assume you'd only do it once, but, you know, we had that back in the day for that exact purpose. You stopped traffic for kids to come across, and that light only turned red when you had somebody press the button and was wanting to cross, and then, you know, and basically you had your sign that said, don't walk, and then when the light turned red, they got the walk sign. Is that a possibility? Because it might not be, like I said, you know, more times out of the day than not, or you'd only have that light active for certain time. I don't know how it would work, but
It'd be awful tough to do that if he's gonna do it on 3 spots, you know.
no,
just
you'd
block.
only have to do, you'd only be able to do it one, I think
Yeah.
it'd only be one spot.
Right.
Decide if you
People
want it
would
here
pay
at this
attention
one or
more
at
to
the,
I had
At the Elm
talked to
Street.
them about that, actually, when we were first talking about the crossing of the kids and our concerns and just from what we had seen and how do we slow down the traffic and, you know, could it be a stop? And my recollection of all those conversations was no, they did studies and when they're because Valentine's in the middle of their highway project too. So they'd also done studies in Valentine, and Valentine didn't cut the mustard either, apparently, for having actual like stoplights in these areas. And they do all these algorithms based off of number of vehicles per whatever hour time frame, and they have some statistics as to how they determine where and when you can put traffic signals, and none of us on Highway 20 cut that mustard apparently. So the best we could do was the flashing signal.
You can't actually stop them.
You can't
I think
actually stop the traffic.
If it's the crosswalk signs that I'm thinking where it just gets aggressively flashy when someone's actually there. To me, that jumps out more than if you've got a light that is green 99% of the time.
Yeah.
I can think Lincoln
Yep.
31st and Vine. I think I saw it red once and I think I ran it.
You didn't see it, Red.
Just those ones that are used to always being green, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 times, then I think that's less likely to catch an attention than that flashing crosswalk. If it, the ones I'm thinking of, they get pretty,
Well, that's, I think what I have
almost like a
envisioned.
camera flash type thing that goes off around the sign that, yeah.
But yeah, it's my understanding won't actually stop traffic, it's just an alert that someone is there trying to cross.
So keep the 25s or abandon?
I'm stoked with the reduction of speed.
Do we need
If you
like
can
a
get them to do
motion?
it.
I think, my understanding from Carl was, yes, they would kind of like a decision so that they know how to advise moving forward on the electrical poles and.
Is there any liability protection for you if you keep those in place and a bad thing happens versus a bad thing happening and nothing being in place? Have you?
Well, no, I guess off the top of my head, I wouldn't necessarily think so. I mean, it's
Because you're
state
not
right
stopping.
away for, what, 50 feet on either side?
I've seen school crossings as low as 15 miles an hour and 20.
But probably not on
Other
state
towns.
highways though. You know, around schools, yeah, but probably not on state highways down to 15.
I can name you one.
Which one?
Highmore, South Dakota.
Oh, well, those goofy South Dakotans, you never.
I guess I would move that we keep the reduced speed zone as is with flashing yellow lights indicating each end of the zone during the hours of, that they currently operate, whatever that is.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second, any other discussion? Call roll.
Sean,
Aye.
Brad,
Yes.
Vance.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously, thank you, good discussion. And we are on to the city administrator, clerk, treasurer report, and she really wants to talk because her voice is strong.
It's much better than it was. I have a voice, so that's part of it. So for the Highway 7 project for the design build engineering services, I did get an RFQ published. To be eligible for CDBG funding for the project, they require that those RFQs be published in a daily newspaper now. So that ran in the Lincoln Journal-Star. The deadline for that was February 18th, so that's Friday. So I'm hoping that come Friday, we'll have some packets with different things from different engineers. I would ask the council, if there's at least 2 of you maybe that would volunteer to at some point sit down with Joel and I after the 18th and look at those so we can score them, review them, and then make a recommendation back to the full council so we can kind of get cracking on.
I could too, I'll be in town, so most, the next couple weeks.
Okay, I appreciate that.
What day is that again?
Well, the 18th would be Friday, but they have till 5 o'clock Friday, so it'll probably be next week.
Okay, so I'll be gone until Tuesday. I'll be back in town actually on Wednesday.
Okay, so
We'll have
anytime
to be after that.
after Wednesday.
Yeah.
And basically with my schedule, you gave me an hour notice, I could be
Okay.
here, so.
And in the past, when we've done that, it does take probably a couple of hours, depending on how thoroughly, you how many different ones we have. I'm anticipating probably at least 3 different firms. Hopefully we'll submit something. So yeah, it would take 2 hours to sit down and score those. The CARC has kind of continued working since the last meeting. Heather Sikita had taken the comments from the CARC review that they had done back in December. She has created a draft plan that had gotten circulated back out to the committee, and I know everybody's been pretty busy and gone, and so I haven't heard back from everybody as to whether or not we're kind of all good with what we've got there. But hopefully by the March meeting, we'll be ready to do the public hearing and present that to the city council so that the planning committee can kind of take it and run with it here in the next couple of months. We had our audit. Dana F. Cole was in the office on the 24th and 25th of January to conduct our audit for fiscal year ended 2021. Seemed to go fine. Haven't heard from them since. They have till March to finish it and file it. So. And then Big Iron has kind of seemed to have exceeded our expectations, which we're happy about. The tally we were given from Big Iron was $119,795.66. So that's pretty great. And Applied Connective, that's kind of the other big thing that's been happening. During the budget workshops, we talked about the need to update our kind of network and IT equipment here in the building. Three River had run fiber to the building quite a while ago, but we couldn't hook it up with the current equipment we had. So we've been waiting on Applied Connective to get here with the new equipment, and they were here this week, or I should say, yeah, last week. And did the switcheroo. We have our own server now, which is good. We also have new email addresses. So right now we've got mail forwarding on all of our current email addresses, but we have our own domain that's tied to the website, so the emails are all tied in with that. So it's all at cityofresort.com now. So that's kind of been the big thing, is just getting everything switched over and making sure we're being consistent with all of that. But the fiber got hooked in, lightning speed, which has been great because we were really struggling with that, with all of our, with all of our new updates. Everything is online and you have to export and import and sync, and that was just not working as well as we had hoped. So with the fiber now, that's going much better. Yeah. Well, I don't know what we have. It would be whatever the standard. 250. I don't know that, I
I
haven't
did
even
a
done a
speed test today when I was trying to upload our council videos into YouTube, and they were, and I don't know much about it, but they were both at 90 as I was uploading old videos.
90 was the upload.
Mm-hmm.
At either rate, it's way better
It's
than
better
what
than
we
the
had.
.8,
So.
we couldn't upload anything.
I think the
You might wanna
standard,
check in on that though,
Yeah.
as far as like what we're supposed to be.
Yeah, I will confirm.
And what the connections are.
the standard is 100, which your 90 would be about right.
Is it 100? I thought it was 255 and a gig, cause I'm at the bottom level, I'm pretty sure, and I get 250 at my house.
At a house, not at a business. Not at a commercial
I'll
business,
double
you
check.
get 100.
So it is. I don't work.
We should just start living in this office.
240, we're at 240 something.
Honestly, 100 versus 250 for people isn't much of a.
At either rate,
I like it.
it's way,
Yeah.
it's way better than what we had, so we're grateful for that.
At $100 a month, you only want 100.
Yeah.
You can't afford the 250 commercially.
Otherwise, we just kind of keep plugging away, so.
All right, thanks. Any other questions for Lisa?
We're, I was just gonna ask, with, I see Buckley working on City Shop, where, I mean, you don't have to get into detail if it's still ongoing, but is there still pursuit of a remedy there from this added expense of Buckley having to go in and do all that?
There will be.
Okay.
Hope to address that next meeting.
Okay.
All right, I think I'm gonna adjourn the meeting at 6:19. Sorry, 11:45 minutes are up. Yep. Thanks, everybody.